Welcome to week 4. We are halfway through already. I've added all the written information for this week as well as the steps into the checklist. So if you downloaded the link to those in week 1 and if you go to them now, then you can follow along with me. If you didn't download them, then you can do that by going to the description of this video and signing up for them there. The Kindle version of the written document is also available for anyone who prefers that over a PDF. The Kindle version can also work on an iPhone and an Android phone. Unfortunately, it has to be 99 cents because I can't make it free because I'm giving away the other written version for free. So it goes against Amazon's guidelines to do that. If there's some other platform that you would like me to make written instructions available on, then please let me know. Just a reminder of why I'm teaching you everything that I know that I do for my clients that works. It's because I want to pay forward the help that was given to me in the past. If you have been finding these videos useful, then please like the videos. Also, please share them with any business owners you know who have a local business where they want people from their local area, or anyone who has an online store. You never know how useful they might find it too. Firstly, a summary of what we covered in week 3. So we looked at some simple on-site changes. On your Contact Us page, in the footer, we looked at the footer copyright and the developer link. And we also looked at your sidebars and calls to action. And I talked about how these simple changes can make a massive difference to your rankings for your important keywords. A reminder again of how much time you would like to invest in SEO and what kinds of value that's going to bring to your website. So if you are able to do 2 hours a week, then effectively you're investing $1,000 a month of SEO into your website. In a competitive industry where you have more than 10 people competing for your keywords, you may need to do SEO for like 2 to 4 hours a week forever. But in a non-competitive industry where you've got less than 10 people competing for your keywords, then you can get away with a lot less time investment, and you could even possibly stop SEO at some point in time and see how you go, and then maybe restart it again, or maybe just spend 1 month out of every year doing some extra SEO on your site. Right, so let's get into checking for some website errors and issues. I mean, the key thing is that if you have issues with your website, then all the SEO in the world is could be possibly just for nothing, because you actually want to get results. I mean, that's the whole point of it, right? So if you've got errors on your site and you don't even know about it that are actually stopping the SEO from working, then all the SEO you've done so far could be a waste of time, and we don't want that, right? So there's some simple checks that you can do just to make sure that everything's going okay with your website. So the 5 things that we're going to check today are your Webmaster Tools, your domain history. We're going to look at tests to see whether your site is HTTPS and secure. We're going to look at some more HTTPS and www dot potential issues. And then we're also going to look at your website speed. So the first thing we're going to look at is connecting to the various Webmaster tools. And you've got Google Search Console, Bing Webmaster Tools, and then there's some other Webmaster tools. Now these are free programs that are actually provided by each of these search engines. They're very useful to index website pages, and they also allow you to check for website errors. So in some cases, setting this up may have already been done for you by your web developer, but if it hasn't been, then we're going to find out now. So the first thing that we're going to do is go to Google Search Console. So of course this is Google's program, and I've got a whole set of instructions here for how you can add yourself in there if you're not already there. But firstly, what you want to do is click on this link to go to Google Search Console. You want to sign in with any Gmail email accounts that you have. See if you can sign in with whatever Gmail email accounts you have, and see if you've actually got your website in there as a property. So if we go into Google Search Console now, you you can see that I'm looking for my personality types website. And so I'm logged in over here as one of my Gmail accounts. I was able to find this property and see that I'm a verified owner. Now, if you can't find that, if you go into the account and there's just nothing in there, then we're going to run through the instructions for how to add yourself. So Google is always changing things. And so what I'm going to run through now could actually be different when you go to do it yourself, because every online program just loves to always change it up a bit. When you try to add a property, it should come up with a screen like this. Let's go back to Google Search Console. So if I go in here and I start typing what my website is, and if it's not there, then it will give me the option to add a property. So then you can click on that and it will come up with this screen that enables you put your website in there. So what I'm going to do today is add my website. So what you want to do is that when you add it, you want to make sure that you add this exactly as it is when you go to the live website. So if I go to my live website, that's the proper URL. And so when you're doing it in Google Search Console, you want to make sure that you're putting it in there with the exact URL. And then you press continue. And in this case, it's actually auto-verified it for me using the fact that it found it in Google Analytics. Now, sometimes it won't do that. Sometimes it's going to give you options to verify it. So I'll show you in the instructions here. Sometimes it will say, okay, you've got these 4 options here to verify it. And it'll give you HTML tag, Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, or the domain name provider. Now, like I said here in step 8, I usually start with Google Analytics because if that works and it's the easiest, and as you saw, it just actually automatically did it for me then. But if it doesn't, then the next one that I often tend to use is the HTML tag. And when you click on that, it will come up with a screen that looks like this. And then you can copy this tag, and then you want to go to your website and put it into your SEO plugin. Now, if you have Yoast SEO, then you would click on the SEO plugin section, you go to the Webmaster Tools section, and then you're putting the Google verification code in there. So whatever SEO plugin that you have on your website, it should be the equivalent of doing that. Then if you want to go and add in other users, it will come, you can go to the settings and go to users and permissions. Now, since I've done this and put this screenshot in here, it does seem like it might have changed again. So we're going to go back and have a look for my website. So one of the things I've noticed is that when you're in the settings, it doesn't always bring up the section here, users and permissions. It seems to, when I first came into the account, it just said you are a verified owner, didn't have any access to adding more people. So then I had to click on the Learn More, which took me to this page. So then I clicked on Manage Users and Permissions. And because I'm logged into 2 Gmail accounts, it took me to the account that I didn't want to go to. So then I had to change the account. And we're now in the settings section. And it says here that I am a verified owner. So in this case, it has actually brought up the users and permissions. So I can now go over here and I want to add another user. And so now I have both of my Gmail accounts that I pretty much only use for this kind of thing with access to this. It's very odd. But, you know, these are the kind of things that happen all the time where you have to be a detective to work out how to get to the bits that you want to access. Okay, so then what you need to do is submit the XML sitemap. And so you want to go into sitemaps, which is sort of under the index section. So if that was all like that, you go index, then you go sitemaps. And you can see that I've got a sitemap added in here that's successful. So if you're using Yoast SEO and WordPress, then the sitemap looks like this, and you add it into there. Yeah, so for most sitemaps on a lot of websites, if you don't have Yoast SEO, then it will just be sitemap.xml. So if I go to my new Large Hope website, then I haven't submitted a sitemap yet. So I'm going to submit that in there now. And submitting it in there just helps with indexing of all the pages on your website. And now we're just going to run through some of the sections in here. So you've got the overview section, and because this is a new site, it's not going to show you anything here. It tells me that my site has been switched to mobile indexing, which just means that it's using the SEO that's on the mobile version of the website. Now, if you have just one version of your website, and it's what's called a responsive website, so it adjusts to all different devices, then your mobile, desktop, tablet website is all the same anyway. If you do have two different versions of your website, then that's something definitely to ask me about, that I can go and investigate for you, or talk to your web developer about. Because if it's indexing a mobile version of your website that is only 20% of your full website, then that's a problem. So I've got that now. I'm not going to really see any data here, so we're going to go back to the personality types one. Okay, so it gives you an overview here. So it's showing the total web search clicks. You've got covers there, so it's telling me I've got 3 pages with errors. You can have a look at your speed, your mobile usability, and your site links. So the first thing that we're going to do, because we're going to do speed later, so we'll go have a look at the mobile usability. And it's telling me that I have 21 issues on here, that the text is too small to read. So then it will give me a list of all the different pages where on a mobile device, it thinks the text is too small to read. So that's something where I can go and talk to a web developer about. And then it's saying clickable elements are too close together. So again, on 21 of these pages, you've got clickable elements that are too close together. So you want to go in and see what are your errors, and then go and talk to a web developer about it. Because even though Google Search Console is coming back to say that you have these errors, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually a problem for your site. So you can go into each of the individual sections. So you can go into the performance side of it, and if you click on all these things up here, then it will show you some data there. So you've got, this is one of the biggest searches that people are clicking on. So I'm getting 100, so this is over the last 3 months, 176 clicks when someone searches for INFP fictional characters. And this is the number of impressions. So the click-through rate there is 5.4%. The average position is 8 on the first page of Google. Now, I don't take any of this data as gospel. It's often wrong. So I just tend to look at trends in the data over time. So we'll look at what the change is in the number of queries from a certain time last year compared to, say, this month, this year, that kind of thing. But you can see that you can go down and see all the different pages that Google Search Console, so it's clicking on. But if you look at this data and the number of clicks that you get in a month compared to the data in Google Analytics, it's usually totally different. So you can't rely on it to really tell you anything, but you might just want to look at the trends. So if I take away these, and we can see that trend-wise, the total clicks is definitely going up significantly. It went up massively up to a peak around the 15th of May. If I take that away and just look at the total impressions, you can see that the number of impressions hasn't necessarily increased, but I'm getting way more clicks to the website. then I can have a look at the average click-through rate. So it tends to go in waves. And then we can see that the average position. So I'm not necessarily increasing in rankings, but I'm getting way more clicks, which means that there's just a lot more people searching. Okay, so then you can click on URL inspection. You can type the URL in there and you can click and it will retrieve some data from Google. So it's come back and it's given me ticks for all of these. If it didn't give you ticks for those, then again, that's something that you might want to go and talk to your web developer about. Then we can click on coverage and it's saying that I've got 3 errors here with 2 issues. So here's a submitted URL, but it's marked as no index. And then it will tell me which pages they are. So basically what it's saying is that these pages here are in my sitemap, but they're not indexed, and that's fine because I don't want them to be indexed. I don't want Google to find those pages. So even though sometimes it tells you there's an error, it might not necessarily be an error, but again, it's something that you can always check with your web developer about, or an SEO person, or ask me, take screenshots and send me an email. So one of the key critical things though is looking at these 404 errors. So if you have a 404 error, now in my case it's just the checkout, because the checkout doesn't really exist on the website, but it was a page that used to exist. So sometimes when I come into this 404 section, there might be 20 different URLs in there that are old pages on the website that are actually pages that get traffic. And so when a 404 error is a problem, is if the page that is the 404 error is actually getting traffic. So you can go into your Google Analytics and you can go and see, is this page actually getting me any traffic? So this is not something that a web developer will necessarily know how to check for you, or that would check for you unless you specifically ask them to. And so I would suggest that you go into your own Google Analytics data. We go over here to acquisition. We go to all traffic, channels. And then what we want to do is go and find the landing pages. So it might be under other and acquisition, and then landing page. So now these are the landing pages on my website for the last week. So what I actually want to do is look maybe for the last year. So I'll go change that to 2019. Now I want to see if that page is actually getting any traffic. So what I would then do is copy this word checkout, because when we're in here, you'll see that it doesn't give you the first part of the URL, just the second bit. So you only want to put in those words. It's critical to only put in the words that are in this part of the URL. And we're going to go up into this advanced search bar here, and we're going to click on that. And we're going to see, has anyone ever gone to that checkout page? No data. So no one has ever gone to that checkout page. Whereas like if I put in, say, something else, INTP, then we can see that it's showing me all the pages that have INTP in the URL, and we can see that there's lots of people that are going to those pages. So, but if there was nobody going to the pages, then you don't need to do anything about that 404 error. But if this is the URL that was my 404 page, and if I put that into there, so just say over in here, this was the end part of the URL, and I just searched for that, then I can see that there's 719 people who've been going to that page. Now, if it was a 404 error, then you might have like no traffic from this point because it's become a 404 error or very little traffic. But what you then want to do is redirect that. This is where you can get your web developer to do it. You want to ask them to redirect this specific old page on your website to some relevant new page. Now, if it's an old service that you don't even actually provide anymore, then you could still redirect it to like the main services page. But if it's a page that you don't actually want anyone to ever find and you've got nothing at all that's relevant on your website anymore, then you wouldn't worry about it. So these 404 errors are only important if the page is getting traffic and if there's some other relevant page on the website that traffic could be going to. So to give you an example of what the 404 page actually looks like. So it should look like this, where it says not found. Okay, so we just submitted the sitemap. There's another section in here where you can actually request removals of URLs. So if there's a URL that's a 404, but it's still getting traffic. So just say this was a page I didn't want anyone to ever go to ever again, and it's still getting traffic, then that's when I can ask Google to remove that URL so that nobody goes to that page anymore. So you would just click on new request and then you remove that URL only. Now, when we were up in this top section in the overview, it took us to the mobile usability section. She saw that there was some errors there. It took us to the site link section where there was no errors. Then you can go in and have a look and see if you've got any manual actions. So if there was a manual action on your website, then you would definitely need a web developer and an SEO person to help you work through that. If there was any security issues, then again, web developer and an SEO person. There's a section here that has kind of like legacy tools. I don't know how much longer that will be there because because Google Search Console has considerably updated itself. So you might have this on your system and be able to go back and have a look at some other things from the past. There's a link section where you can see all the external links going to your website, all of your internal links, the top sites that are linking to you, and the top linking text. So for me, I can see, okay, external links, the most number of links are going to my page where people can do a personality test. The top linked page inside my site is the education page, because that's the page that I want most people to go to, and then this is the second most linked because that's the second most important page. So I'm telling Google that this is the most important page on my website, so you might want to go in and have a look. I mean, we did stuff on internal linking last week to do with the footer and the sidebars. And so if you've got this data for Google Search Console, then this is where you can check and see how well your internal linking is going from what you did last week. And so if there's a page here that is totally irrelevant, that has the most amount of links to it, then you definitely want to try and do something about that and find a way to reduce the links to that page, which you may need to get the help of a web developer or an SEO person to help you with that. We can also find here the top linking sites, so the sites that you're getting the most amount of links for. So you can click on more, and I can see that these are the sites that are linking to me. And then you can see the top linking text that's going to your website. So you want to make sure that it's actually relevant. So this is a URL by the looks of it. So most of my links are actually from the pages, and this is why it's so important to actually have something relevant in your domain name, because this is actually HTTP, :// www. personality types, .xyz / type test, etc., etc. So that's actually a URL backlink to my site. So you can see that in every link I've got like personality types. If we go and have a look, we can see that in, so many of the links I've actually got personality types, and I've got the type of personality type. So I've got all the text that's linking back to my site makes complete sense for my website. Now, if I had things like this, if I just had things like pick and stuff that was that didn't have anything to do with personality types, didn't have the different types of personality types in there. If it was just all pick and click here and nothing with any keywords in it, external link, then it can be a problem because it's not really helping your site at all. So that's where what I've taught you so far about looking at, is your domain name helpful? And then we're going to go into, in the coming weeks, looking at what your total URLs are, because if your domain name isn't helpful, it can still be helpful by looking at what the remainder of the page URLs are. And then when you're linking from a lot of the business directories or other websites, then we want to make sure that, we're linking with something hopefully that has the keywords in it. And then we've got the settings, which we were talking about there before. So look, if there's something specific in Google Search Console that you want me to go into in more detail, then please let me know. Right, so now we're on to Bing Webmaster Tools. So obviously this is Bing's program, and you might already be connected, but if not, then we're going to go through the steps for how to do that. So firstly, you want to click to go to Bing Webmaster Tools, and you want to sign in with your Microsoft email account. You can also sign in with Google or Facebook. So then what you want to do is check, I suppose, firstly to see if you've got any sites in there, but if not, then you want to add your site in there. So yours might already appear at the top in your system if you only have one site in there. So if I want to see if my website is already in there, if I had hundreds of sites, then I would just do Control F, type in large, see if my website's in there. If it's not, then I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to click on Add, and then it's going to ask me to put the sitemap in there, because again, this is on Yoast SEO, and then I'm going to add that. Now what it's going to ask me to do is to verify it. So I'm going to use the meta tag way of verifying it. You can use a CNAME record if that makes any sense to you, but I'll show you. This is what I do with my SEO plugin. So again, I'll copy that. I'm going to go over to the SEO plugin. Then I go to the Webmaster Tools section, paste it in there, and then click on Save Changes. And it will just put that code bit in there for me. So now when I go back to verify ownership, make sure that I verify it using this option, because it's given me, 3 different options there to verify. So I'm going to verify that. And now it will start tracking information for me, and you can see that I've got the sitemap in there. Now, there's a whole range of things that you can look at in here as well. I don't really look in Bing Webmaster Tools because in Australia, like 90% of people search with Google. In some countries, you might have 20 or 30 or 40% of people that actually use Bing. And so in that case, looking at things in Bing could be really important, but they're going to have like similar things to what you find in Google. So you've got like whether it's mobile friendly, they've got like security section so that you can see if there's malware or if there's any issues on the site as well. So depending on what country you're in will depend on whether it's mostly Google or Bing or a combination of both that you're actually going to use in order to check on your website. So we go through, so that's where you add it into the Bing. And again, if you want to add in a user to Bing, then you want to go down to this section here on that left-hand side. So we want to go under Configure My Site. And then we've got users here. So at the moment, you can then go in and add, any other users in there if you want to. So you might want to add your web developer in there, or this is where they would add you if they were setting it up for you. Now there's some other webmaster tools that you'll see, and you'll see this if you have a look in Yoast. It's kind of got Badoo and Yandex in there. Now, you would go through the same process to verify those, and there's the links there. However, Yandex is the most popular search engine in Russia. Now, I've never signed up anyone to Yandex because it is a search engine for Russia, and I don't have any clients in Russia or anyone who's trying to target anyone in Russia. So therefore, submitting to that Webmaster Tools, in my opinion, isn't going to be relevant. Badoo, again, is not a site that I've ever submitted to because it's the most popular search engine in China. And so, a site needs to be written in Mandarin if you want to rank in Badoo. English words don't rank on the Badoo search engine at all. So it'd be totally useless. Badoo's not going to index my site. So the next thing that we're looking at is, has the domain name been used in the past? So if your domain name has actually been used before you bought it and you didn't actually know that anyone had owned it before you, then this could actually be a good or a bad thing, depending on what it was used for and what kind of links are pointing to it. So this is rare. It's not something that you're going to find very often for a small local business, but it can happen. And so we just want to check just in case. The general rules that are apply is that if the domain name has never been used, then that's great news because you're starting with a clean slate. If the domain name has been used previously, then there could be issues, or in fact it could be helpful. Now if you don't check and there is an issue, then the site may never rank in Google or other search engines. And so this is where it's critical, because if you don't check this and you just and you don't know that there's some dodgy site that was on there before with a whole stack of dodgy links, and that Google has said I'm never going to rank this website ever, then obviously that's a problem. Very rare, but it does happen. So here's the steps to check, just for peace of mind, really. So you're going to go to this here, the waybackmachine.org. And then you're going to enter the URL, and you want it without these bits here. So if you were going to look at Facebook, you would just look at facebook.com. And then there's going to be two possibilities. So the first possibility, we can see where we type it in incorrectly, nothing comes up. So if we go, so this is the Wayback Machine here now. And if I click in there and I put something that doesn't exist, Facebook, like that, you can see that that was never a domain name that's ever been owned by anybody. There's no, that we know of, there's certainly no record of it in the Wayback Machine. Whereas if you go to something like facebook.com, then you can actually see the whole history of Facebook. You can see what it looked like. You can go back to 1999, on the 25th of January 1999, and we can see what Facebook used to look like. So that's all it was back then. It often doesn't show you the images, but these were the pages that you could go to. So yeah, pretty cool, hey? But yes, getting back to this, so if you go in there and there's nothing there, then it means that no one's ever owned it before, but it also means that your website is not indexed either, is not in this Wayback Machine. And it can actually be quite useful to have your site in there, because if your website for some reason ever gets lost, then you can actually go back into the Wayback Machine and and find like the latest copy of your website and rebuild it from there if you need to. So it is like having an extra backup copy. So sometimes what will happen if it's not in there, then it will actually give you the option to say, do you want to add it? So in this case, it's not giving you that option. That's because this isn't actually a real live website that it can see. But if your site is obviously live and it's a real website, then it will usually give you the option to add it in. So that's the first possibility. The second possibility is that when you go in there, there is some kind of a history. So like you can see with this, we've got history right up to the current day, or in this case, with this website here, beachsidebeauty.com.au, there was history from 2009 up to 2018, and then there's no history. And then the client bought this domain name. So there is this back history for this particular site, and so that can be a good or a bad thing. What we want to check is if there was any history prior to when you bought the domain name. So you might want to go in now and check your website in the Wayback Machine and see, was there any history before you bought your domain name? So maybe you bought it here in 2019 and you're like, oh wow, there was actually versions of it beforehand. And then you want to go in like we did with Facebook and see what those versions were. What was the website actually on? If it was on something completely different to your website, could there be an issue? So this is where it kind of gets tricky or interesting, because if you do have history, then the domain name could harm, help, or have no impact. So if you didn't have history, then you can kind of go on to the next section. But if it does have history, then that's where we need to work out what to do. So if the website was shut down about 10 years ago, it's probably unlikely that it's going to help or harm you. But if, for instance, the last archive up here was like 3 months ago, and then you bought the domain name, then there's more of a chance that the links going to the site could impact you in a negative way. So how do you actually assess the domain and the links? Well, this is something where you might want someone like me to do that for you, because obviously if you don't have any experience or know even what you're looking for, then it can be quite difficult to know what to do. And so if you are the rare person that is in this situation, then you might want to find an SEO specialist who can help you to work out whether it's a problem for your website or not. If you just want to get a little bit of an overview right now of the kind of things that you can look at to see if you think it is a problem, or the kind of things that I would look at, then firstly, we're going to look at various programs to see. So one of the things that we were just looking at was the Google Search Console. And like I said, you can ask your web developer to connect it if you haven't got it connected for you. But you can go in there and you can see what links are going to your website. So we were just looking at that on my personality types website. You go into this links section, and you can scroll down to see what are the top linking sites that are linking to you. So then you can go to more, and then you can go and check these sites out and see, are they relevant at all in any way to your business? And if they're completely irrelevant, then you could have a problem. There's also these other programs that you can use that will find links that maybe Google Search Console doesn't find. But usually for this kind of process, Google Search Console should give you enough information. The benefit of Moz here is that it will actually give you a spam score of some of these sites. So what you might want to do is we'll go and have a look at this, and then just say I want to have a look at this site, cyberspace and time. And I'm going to put this into Moz, and I'm going to see what kind of spam score this site has. Firstly, if I go in here, it will take me and show me that it has a domain authority of 48, which is not too bad. Click on spam score. But the spam score of this site is 28%. So that's pretty high. Now, this is not a site that I put links on. This is a site that is just automatically scraping my content and linking to me. Now, as you can see, my traffic was going really well for this site, so it's not something that I'm going to worry about. Sometimes you can have these crazy sites that are linking to you. I mean, look, they've got a whole stack and look at all the links going to them. So they're all Chinese or some other language, a lot of them. So, if you had a site like this and you were a local business, then that would definitely be something to worry about. As an online store, maybe not so much. There's lots of scraper sites that do this kind of thing. But as a small local business, you don't really want a link from a site like this. And there's a whole video that I've got on what's called disavowing links that I'll put here in the notes section, and maybe in the description of the video, because if you had a whole stack of these, then you probably need to disavow those links. But that's a very complex process, so it might just be something where you ask somebody to do that for you. Now in SEMRush, as I showed you in an earlier video, you can do some free searches and it will also give you a toxic score of some of the links that are going to your website. Or there's also ahrefs, where again it will give you more information about any links that are going to your website from the past. So these are the questions that you really want to ask yourself about the domain. So you want to know what the Moz spam score is for your domain. So if we go into here and you put your domain in there, I can put in, my personality types one, and I could see what the spam score was for that. And this is the link that we just looked at here to analyze that. The other option you can do is you can get this SEO Pro toolbar, and you can download this for free, and it will actually sit up here in your little icons. So if I click on that, so I can see that for Moz itself, it has a page authority of 65, a domain authority of 83, and a spam score of 3. And so if you get this little tool in your bar, then you can go to any website and check that out. Then I can see I have a page authority of 17 and a domain authority of 13 and a spam score of 2%. So you can check that out for your website by either going to this tool here and putting it in there and then going to the spam score, or you can install this little tool which makes it super easy to check all kinds of websites. So you want to find out what's the spam score of your website, what's the spam score of other people's websites. It's probably more likely ideal 3% or less. 1% is a bit tricky to get these days. Then you want to look at what are the domain names of the sites that are linking to you. Are they real sites? So are they relevant local directories, other local sites, real blogs? Or are they sort of horrible looking foreign sites, image scraper sites, blogs that are sort of just not real? And there's a whole stack of data about that in the video. Want to look at what is the anchor text linking to the sites? Does it have relevant keywords? And again, some of that might come up for you in your Google Search Console. If you go back and have a look at the top linking text, if you suddenly had a lot of stuff in there that said Viagra, then you would know that the domain name from the past, probably not such a good name. We'll put a link here to the video that I did on disavowing links, because that video is going to give you the most information if you really want to go and try and do this yourself on how to check whether there's any problems with the sites that are linking to you. And again, this is only if somebody had bought the site before you, or I suppose if you've had your domain name out for a number of years and you have dodgy links going to your site. Okay, so any of those things above that I mentioned could be a risk. You can never fully know if the good factors will help or the bad factors will harm. So this is what I would do. If a site had a spam score of 5% on my own domain name, if it had links from horrible sites and irrelevant anchor text, then I would consider choosing a new domain now. Now, obviously, if you've had your site for a number of years, then that could be a real problem. And so there can be lots of issues with choosing a domain name, changing a domain name. So I definitely recommend that if you think there could be issues with your old site, then contact me so that I can actually look at it, or contact some other SEO person that someone in your local area recommends, and see if they can check that out for you. Or you can do a search online to look for people who will remove these links for you. So the key takeaway message is that a previously used domain could have links going to it that might harm your current and future SEO. And then you will need to make a decision as to whether you're willing to take that risk. If you've noticed over the last couple of weeks from the things that we've done in the earlier videos that your site is actually improving in the rankings, and that these links that you've got on your site don't seem to be causing a problem, like for me, where I've got that spammy link, but I'm still getting plenty of traffic and increasing in the rankings for keywords, and so it's not a problem. So you don't want to remove sites unnecessarily that are actually helping you because you think they might be a problem either. So that's why it's a good idea to get someone to investigate this who's quite experienced, if you've got some kind of history there. Now we're going to look at, is your site HTTPS or HTTP, and is it secure? Now Google wants all sites to be secure and using HTTPS. If Google wants it, then you want it too. Really, there's nothing else that you need to know or understand about that. It's just that if Google wants it, then you want it. But yeah, look, you can go and read up a whole lot of information about HTTPS if you want to. But certainly from my perspective and from an SEO perspective, even if it doesn't provide much SEO benefit now, it most likely will in the future. And you just don't know who's actually going to your site, and how much it's saying not secure might be an issue for that particular person. And this is for online stores as well as local businesses. It doesn't matter. They want all sites to be secure. Okay, so what I'm going to get you to do in a minute is go and check your website. So if your site is secure, it's going to have this little lock there. So for my site here, you can see it has like the little lock there. It doesn't show me the whole rest of the URL, but if I click there where the P is, then it will show me the rest of the URL there. Okay, so that's good. That's what you want. You want it to be this, or you want to be able to see that. If it's not secure, it's going to look like this. So it's going to have a little I there, not secure, and then your domain name. Now, a site can still be HTTPS and not be secure. So if your site, so I want you to go check that now, and if your site does actually have HTTPS and it has the lock next to it, like mine does, then you can skip this section because it's all done already for you. So if your site actually has HTTP there instead of the HTTPS, and if it's not secure, then you need to contact your web hosting company and get this changed. You'll also need to contact your web developer and ask them to set the redirect protocol so that all the HTTP URLs redirect to the HTTPS for both the www and the non-www versions of the site. So you can copy and paste that or write that into the email for them. If you're doing everything yourself and you have WordPress, then there is a plugin called Easy HTTPS Redirection, and there's the link to that. And then whatever other system that you're on may also have some kind of plugin that allows you to do this redirect from the HTTP to the HTTPS. In the next section, I'm going to go through to actually show you what that looks like when it does or does not redirect. But for you at the moment, the key thing is that we're saying that you either have HTTP and not secure on there, and the first thing is that you want to get it changed to HTTPS. So that's when you're going to contact your web hosting company potentially first to do that, or the web developer who may do it for you with your web hosting company. And then you need to get the web developer to do this. We're going to look at whether your site is HTTP versus HTTPS and www versus non-www. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what all these things are. If you want to do research on that, you can. From an SEO perspective, as far as I can see, it doesn't really matter whether the site is www or not, but it really does matter that it's HTTPS. So at this point now, we're assuming that your website is HTTPS and it's secure. So we're assuming that your website looks like this. So your main website could be HTTPS with the www dot, or it might be without the www dot. So either of those are fine. But what we want to make sure is that whatever version you do have, the other version is redirecting to it. So what we're going to check now is whether we can see both the HTTP and the HTTPS, and whether we can see the www dot and the non-www dot versions. So so these are the tests that we're going to do. We're going to run through some tests. So I'll just explain this bit now, then I'll go do it on my website. So firstly, we're going to remove the S from in here so that it looks like this. And then we're going to hit enter and see what happens. Then we're going to remove the www dot, or we're going to add the www dot and see what happens then. Okay, so we go to my website, and so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that S, and then I'm going to hit enter. And if I click on this again now, we'll see it's gone back to the HTTPS version. So that's a good sign. That means it's redirecting. If it hadn't gone back to it, if it now had if it stayed on that, and then if it also had not secure over there, then that means that there's a problem. So again, now we're going to keep the S in there, but we're actually going to remove the www dot, and then we're going to hit enter or return, and we'll see what happens. Again, it's gone back to the version with the www dot. So that's exactly what you want to happen. If it stayed like that, without the www dot, then you have a problem. If it stayed like that, with the HTTP, then you have a problem. Because effectively what's happening is if this is what came up for my site, then it means that Google can see 2 versions of the site, or potentially 3 or 4 versions of the site, because Google can see the HTTP version of the site, it can see the HTTPS, so it's all one website, but you've basically got the same page live over and over again on different URLs, and that's a problem. Now, sometimes it's actually okay on the home page, but it might not be okay on some other pages within your site. I'm going to now go to my About Us page, and I'm now going to test the About Us page doing the exact same thing. So I've just removed the S, and it's taking me back to that. Just going to remove the www dot. It's taking me back to the version with the www dot. So that's what you want to see. That's what you want to happen. And so you can go through and check some other random pages as well, just to make sure that it's happening for the whole website, not just the home page. So go and check all these various random pages. So if you find that you've got both of these, it will show a website for both of those, you need to contact your web developer. If it shows a website with the www dot and then without the www dot, then you also need to contact your web developer. And they will set up so for the HTTPS, they will set up like this redirect protocol or you can use this plugin in order to make that happen for yourself. If it's still not happening for the www section, then again, you need to go to get your web developer and make sure that they've set up the site so that it does all the redirects properly. So ultimately, you want to make sure that there's only one version of your website that comes up every single time. So either this version or this version. Otherwise, you will never be able to get the best rankings in Google that you could possibly get. In this section, we're going to look at the speed of your website. So the speed of your website, you've probably heard lots about that because it's a thing that people will often talk about as being like a critical factor to ensure that people actually stay on your website. So the things that can affect the speed that we're going to look at is the website code and theme of the website, and also potentially the website hosting. We're generally told that you want the speed to be 1 second or less. Now, certainly if you had some kind of worldwide online store, that's probably like a really good idea. In practice, I've found that for local businesses, it's rare for the speed to be that fast. I will always ask the web developers who've done the site to get the speed as fast as they possibly can without compromising the user experience. But if the site is slower than 3 to 5 seconds, that's when people are more likely to leave the site, depending on how patient they are. So if your speed site, if it took 5 seconds for the site to load, then it's likely that people might just click away before they go there. They can't be bothered. If it's up to 10, 15 seconds before it loads, then it's very likely that they'll click away. And so this tells Google that the person didn't like your website, and it's highly likely that Google will rank it lower. But Google itself has even said that it's only really at these higher speeds, like 5 seconds and over, that it really starts to make a big difference to people sort of going and therefore making a difference to your rankings. So there's a number of checks that you can actually do to see what the speed of your website is like. So the first thing I recommend is type your keywords into Google, and you want to find the top 3 ranking sites for those keywords. And we're going to test your site and those sites. So maybe just your very, very most important keyword, just use that. And then we're going to use the tools below to test their speed and your speed and see how they compare. Because ultimately, the key thing is going to be how you compare to your competitors, rather than having a site speed that's necessarily under 1 second. Because if your competitors' site speeds are 5 seconds and yours is 4, then potentially that's going to be better, and that might be good enough. So you want their speed, your speed, to be as close as possible to the sites that are ranking at number 1 on the top of Google. If your speeds are much slower than that, then you can contact a web developer or a web hosting company. Okay, so we just loaded up and connected yourself to Google Search Console. So in Google Search Console, you can find some information about your site speed. Now they've got one here, Speed Experimental, that you can go into. And one of the things that we have found, I found on many sites, is that there's no information in there. But if there is some information in there, then it's telling me I've got 99 slow URLs. And I can click to open the report. So the fact that even in here it's saying 3 seconds is an issue, then I would definitely say that having site under 1 second isn't so much a problem. So each example URL represents a group of URLs within the same issue and status and similar. So it's one URL in the group. So then if we click this URL, so that's one way of having a look, and I might go, okay, well, maybe that's a bit slower than I want the site to be. The other thing that you can do is you can go and have a look in the legacy information if your site doesn't have any information there. And you can go into the crawl stats, and it's telling me here that the time spent downloading a page in milliseconds is actually, on average, less than a second. So this again is something that I don't even fully understand. I just know that the web developers are the ones that can do something about that, and they will tell me if there's something that they can actually change to make it faster. The other thing that you can change is the actual hosting. So for Google Search Console, because I just added my Large Hope website, I won't have any information in there, so there's no point looking in Google Search Console if you just added the site. Like it won't actually show you anything. So you can see here that when I'm in Large Hope and I go to the Speed Experimental, it shows me nothing. And also if I try and go into the Legacy Tools, then again it shows me nothing. And that's just because it hasn't been around long enough. So if you've just added your site there, then it won't have any data. So we can't use this to look at the speed. So what we can do is use these other two tools here, Pingdom and the Developer Insights. And if you have a look in Google Search Console here, it actually even suggests to go to Page Speed Insights, which is actually the same one here. Okay, so if we go to Pingdom, it looks like this. And so I can test this website here, which is mostly targeting the US. And we've got 2 different locations in the US that I can target. And then I can start the test. Now it's going to be interesting to see what it says, because originally Pingdom told me that this site was taking 12 seconds to load. And I worked with my hosting company as much as I possibly could to try and get like a speed that was faster, but nothing helped. So then I actually changed the hosting company, and it actually went to 1 second in Pingdom. And so the location that I tested was exactly the same. The website was exactly the same. Like I changed nothing apart from the web hosting, and it went from 12 seconds down to 1 second. But now, from Washington in the US, it's saying it's 4.8 seconds. You can also check it just from San Francisco, see what difference that makes. Okay, so from San Francisco, it's 1.69 seconds. So that's not too bad at all. So you can see how it can vary depending on what location that you're testing it from. If I try and test this same website for Sydney, so for Sydney, it's come back at 4.23 seconds. So you can see how it varies on different locations. So really it's about where are you located. So if I was in somewhere in Australia, then I probably want this to be under 3 seconds. If I'm close to San Francisco, or this is where the majority of my clients are from, then it's great because that's where my fastest speed is. However, if I was on the other side of the states, closer to Washington, then and it was 4.8 seconds. It was even slower than it was to Sydney, which is a bit random. The biggest thing that can affect that is actually your hosting company. Where are they hosted from, and sort of like the server speed, etc., etc. But this also does give various ways that a web developer could improve the actual pages on the website. So you could always send this information to them and just ask them, is there a way on your particular website that they can improve the speed? But then, like I said, what you want to do is go and see your top competitors. So if I went, so I'm going to search personality types, and I'm going to see what are the biggest websites that come up. So I've got this website. Oh, that's the same website. Okay, go to that website and that website. Okay, so in this case, it's not even their home page that's coming up. It's like this internal page that's coming up. So I'm now going to go over here. Now we want to test it with the one that I had the best speed with, which was San Francisco. And we'll see what their speed is. So you can see that their speed is super fast. It is less than a second. Now we'll go to the page that ranked second in Google and test them. So their page speed is pretty close to mine, 1.59 seconds. And this is the page that was ranking third in Google. So you can see their load time is around a second. So you can see for this kind of site that it's quite important. So the fact that my site had a load time previously of 12 seconds meant that I never had a chance of ranking on the first page compared to these websites that were super fast. But in your case, it might be the opposite. It might be that your load time is 2 seconds and your main competitors are 4 or 5 seconds. So just go check it out for your specific website. So that's the second test with Pingdom. So the third test that you can do is with the page speed insights. So that is this link here. Now I'll be putting images and more information in there for you when you get the written documents. But for now, so what you want to do again with this is check your website and check your competitors. So if I go put my site in there, then it tells me I get a score of 38 out of 100 on mobile and 78 out of 100 on desktop. So my site could definitely do with some work around the mobile side of things, and it gives you a whole lot of information that could be useful to your web developer in order to try and make that better. Now in practice, I often see scores as low as 5 for local business websites when it comes to mobile. And so there can be a big opportunity for a web developer to do that. But again, we want to see how does it compare to the sites that we're actually trying to compete against. So if we take the personality websites that are my competitors. So remember, mine was 38 and 78. Let's see what theirs is. So they've got 68 on mobile and 97 on desktop. So you can see that they're a lot better than mine. So I really do need to get my site probably better. Let's go and have a look at the next one. So this was the site that's ranking second in Google. So 79 on mobile for them and 80 on desktop. So again, they're significantly better than mine. And this is the site that was ranking third in Google. So they're a little bit better than mine on mobile and a lot better on desktop. So that's what you need to go and do for your website as well, and see how does it actually compare to the sites that are ranking the best for your keywords. Then you can send this to your web developer and ask them to see what they can do in order to improve things for you. So the key takeaway message is that both the hosting and the theme can affect the website speed, and that the website speed affects the probability that someone will wait for your site to open, and this in turn will affect the website's position in the rankings. So when it comes to the hosting, you want to make sure that whatever country you're in and whatever location that you're in, that you are getting the fastest speed to where you want the fastest speed to be. And then you look at your web developer doing whatever they can on the actual website itself to do with the theme and the coding of it to increase the website speed. So that's it for today. If you found this video useful, please like it and share it. Next week's video will appear here if it's ready. And please do ask questions in the video comments, and I'll speak to you again soon.